This is Life Worlds, the place where we explore life through other eyes and minds. Let's flip the script and discover how to orient your world around nature. I'm Alexa Firminish. Come join me as we get down and forage for fungi, stalk coyotes, draft laws for rivers, hum with beehives, sing bird language, and help beavers to dam again. Let these stories spark your reconnection to nature's multiverse. Learn how to bring ecosystems back to life, become an agent for other intelligences, and begin to see how you too are the sum of all life worlds. Hi everyone. As some of you may have recognized, those were the haunting, throbbing songs of humpback whales. Songs which we now know are passed down through different clans of whale families. Songs that adapt and shift as living organisms themselves, the whales singing them across the oceans and across generations. And I invite you to pause and contemplate this for a moment. That those songs are echoing right now through the oceans, right now as this very heartbeat of yours pulses its next beat. Right now, those songs are moving through salty waters. Their vibrations flowing through other sea creatures, rebounding off underground caverns and cliff faces. Indeed, the ocean is beating to a harmonic resonance generated by our ancient ancestors, the whales. Those who 50 million years ago branched off from us as they descended into watery depths and exchanged hoofs and feet for fins. And now, if you ever doubted the power of a song, you might have heard the story of the biologist and bioacoustics expert Roger Payne, who in 1970 introduced the world to the complex vocalizations of humpback whales with his renowned album, Songs of the Humpback Whale. With this, he awakened Western culture to the presence of these great cetaceans, and there was such a swell of public awareness that followed the album that really ended up playing a pivotal role in the creation of new marine protection acts and international whaling moratoriums. So, whale songs. They move human culture quite deeply, and the whales teach us, amongst many, many, many other things, they teach us about song, lineage, and vibration. And one could say that one of the great civilizations and peoples who have been closest to the whales are the whale-riding people, the Māori, the indigenous people of Aotearoa, which is the Maori name for New Zealand. Originally hailing from a vast triangle of islands known as Polynesia, which is bounded by Hawaii in the north, Rapa Nui Easter Island in the east, and Aotearoa in the south. The Maori have a beautiful and deep whale-riding mythology, most famously told in the legend of Paikea, and they are infamous for being some of the most remarkable seafarers in human history, making journeys in double-hulled canoes called waka, navigating with the stars, ocean swells, cloud patterns, and bird migrations. Now, here's another song hailing from the oceans. That song was from our guest today, whose name is Whaia, a Ngāti Kahungunu woman of Māori descent. Whaia is a sonic weaver, which means that she blends the worlds of song, vibration, and whale story in deep ceremony and prayer. She is a vocalist, multi-instrumentalist, designer, cultural producer, and facilitator, and was raised between saltwater shores and the outback desert in northwestern Australia. Whaia travels around the world, sharing and elevating her native culture and connection to source through her haunting vocals, drawn from her mother tongue, the language of Terra, the sun. And she works with instrumental melodies made of wood, bone, clay, and stone, along with the crystalline frequencies of singing bowls. Here's just a short excerpt of one of her songs, so you begin to sense into her vibrations. And perhaps unsurprisingly, Whaia is a great ambassador for the ocean, serving on various foundation boards, and is a member of a Wisdom Keeper delegation, which brings ancient wisdom into contexts such as the United Nations. So, what if singing and the power of our voices could bring us back closer to home? Home being our native belonging to this earth. We'll explore with Whaia her deep story of reclaiming her Indigenous language and instruments, of singing with the whales, and of how to contextualize the concept of ancient oceanic highways once navigated by her ancestors. We also delve into what the ocean sonic worlds might want to tell us today. This episode is a powerful story of reclamation, of courage and remembering, and of how we can tune our bodies to the land and allow something greater to move through. I also definitely invite you to stay on after the episode wraps, as we'll be playing a sample from a much longer track from Whaia's album Whaia and Water, which is the first of 12 releases that will form her Sacred Sonic Sessions. And so now, over to our episode. Dear Whaia, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Life World. It is such a joy to have your face beaming across the screen, across the world. Where are you currently finding yourself? I know it's almost nighttime and evening.
Yes, well, kia ora. Hello, Alexa and everyone. We are calling in from Yugambeh country, which is in the Bundjalung Nation, the east coast of Australia, the Gold Coast, southeast Queensland. And it is also overcast and stormy here today, but it's still a beautiful day.
It's such a joy to have you with us. Whaia, I queued up some of your work and even some vocals in the introduction. And from what I've understood, your current work is so deeply guided by lineage and ancestry and your ancestry. And so that might just be a beautiful place to start. Can you tell us about your ancestors, where you're from, your sort of family web? Who are your ancestors? How are they? And how is your culture appearing in all the different things that you're doing today?
Well, my ancestry is from the stars. Let's start there. I'm earthly born to Aotearoa, to Māori parents, and the North Island, East Coast, North Island of Aotearoa. So Kahuranaki taku maonga, that's my mountain. Wanganui te awa ko Pokawa te waiu, the Wanganui River, and Pokawa is a lake in Hastings, in the Ngāti Kahungunu iwi tribal area. And I was raised by my Māori grandparents, from both Māori parents. And our lineage is the Takitimu Waka. And so we do kind of trace our lineage back to our waka and our journey across the Pacific. But, I was raised growing up with my grandparents, being the firstborn granddaughter. They came to get me in Australia when I was really young, and I'm still piecing those parts together. But I was then taken when I was 7 years old to the desert, the outback desert of Australia, and my mother remarried. So I grew up with Aboriginal grandmother and half Māori, half Aboriginal brothers and sisters. So, and they're from the Yinjirbandi people in the northwestern desert of Western Australia, a place called the Pilbara. So very vast, very red earth country, chasing kangaroos barefoot through the bush. But my bloodline is Māori from, the hot sulfur springs and the deep earthy mountains and those beautiful, beautiful clean rivers. And so I kind of wasn't sure who I was growing up. Like, oh, am I a little Aboriginal girl? Am I a Māori girl? I'm not sure who I am. And so that's been a lifetime path of reclamation and reclaiming parts of myself throughout my life. And maybe I'll say I'm almost there. Some days I'm really there, and some days I'm only halfway there. Let's be honest, because we're still calling back pieces of ourselves. I believe that's how I feel about it. Yeah, I've been here on the East Coast, on the Gold Coast, on Ngāti country, and I birthed my 3 babies here. My son will be 24. My other son will be 22 this year, and my daughter Moana will be 8 in a week and a bit. So yes, very, very powerful pull here on the East Coast to be birthing new life here, and to be living and working with our Aboriginal elders here on country, with ceremony and lots of beautiful magic.
I think a lot of people can identify today with this sense of mixed ancestry, and maybe our blood is different to where we grew up. And then I love that word you used, reclamation and reclaiming. In one of our first conversations, you said you were talking about the Polynesians, which, if I understand correctly, are sort of that line, right, from your Maori side. And you said to me, Polynesians are saltwater people, guided by the whales. We are whale riding people, which I want to get to because that just sounds so epic. And we followed whale migrations to find Aotearoa. And then it's just so interesting that you have this sort of saltwater lineage in you. And then you grew up in the desert, and it's like this water and the soils and the desert kind of together informing you. But I'm curious about this notion of being guided by the whales and being whale riding people. Is that sort of a key being, and how will I say this, like animal being that your lineage identifies with? Like, what's your relationship with the whales, both in terms of your ancestry and between the people from your land and those beautiful, majestic creatures of the ocean?
Well, I think most First Nations people, Indigenous people, have relationships to our animal kingdom, and our animal ancestry, our tipuna, as we call them, our kaitiaki, our guardians, the ones who guard us, perhaps, instead of the other way around, if we're like really listening. Yes, Māori people are saltwater people. We're Polynesians. I mean, it's got to be one of the largest continents. I'm going to say that on the whole planet. It goes all the way up to Hawaii and all across the sea. It's massive saltwater mass that connects us all throughout Polynesia. And yes, we are whale riding people. We have our tipuna Paikia, who's from one of the maraes there. And in our cosmology, in our history, he rode the whale to find Aotearoa. And, even our waka, our canoe, followed the whale migration as well to actually land in beautiful sanctuaries all throughout Polynesia. They really are our guides in the Moana Nui a Kiwa, what we call the Pacific Ocean. And, I think the memory lies more in my DNA, to be honest, because I've only just recently started paddling waka, paddling traditional canoe, and it happens to be in the Salish Sea and in Hawaii, of all places, because I grew up in Australia. And I thought I would learn from my own people in Aotearoa, but it just happens to be that I'm going to the Salish Sea and spending time with the Lumi Nation people, the Eagle Clan, and they're helping me remember and helping us all remember by traveling their ancient highways on the water, and also in Hawaii as well, with my Polynesian star navigating family. So I'm spending some time with them, and I'm taking my daughter, and we're doing voyaging with the Hawaiian Voyaging Outrigger Society. So that's really quite interesting. And when I think about how did I end up there, and how is this unfolding in such a way, the way I like to think about it is that some of our people got in waka and journeyed. I mean, we are voyagers, we're wayfinders, and we went out into the open ocean and followed the stars, and that's how we found new lands, and we were able to create new worlds and new life. And I believe that that's what's happened to me in this new age today, that I've, been taken from my motherland, raised with other cultures. Now I'm learning from other cultures, our way of life, because it's not, we're all connected and we all have these practices. They're just slightly different. I mean, if you're looking at the stars from Hawaii, you'll see Maui's hook and it lays a certain way. And if you go down to Aotearoa in the southern part of the hemisphere, if you were from Hawaii, as my sister says, it looks upside down and sets sideways. So, it's all the same story. It's the same oceanic highways. It just has a slightly different perspective, whether you're up there or down south. But yeah, I find that it's really interesting how that's unfolding for us, the teachings.
I'm fascinated by this concept of the highways on the water. It's so evocative. I also don't think I can go much further now, just for my own curiosity. When you said originally we came from the stars, can you tell me what you mean by that?
Well, what I know that I can share with you is that we, as Māori people, have a cosmology. We have come from Matariki. And Matariki is, or Mataliki, they say in Hawaii, because the language is also the same. That is the Pleiadian star system. And we believe that our new year begins when Matariki, the constellation, rises on the horizon. And that's around June, in the middle of the Gregorian calendar. So, but we also believe that's where the whales and the dolphins come from, the blue planets. And, we originally thought there were 7, but there's 9. And there's beautiful teachings about that, about Matariki. So we have a huge celebration in the middle of the year when it comes to that, and we can tell when it rises, how it rises, what is happening on that dawn, those first few dawns, as to what kind of year we could be having. We have beautiful scholars that teach us about that. Mm-hmm.
There's something so poetic. I think across time, humans have. I know the Dogon of Mali would look at the Sirius stars that weren't even visible with the human eye, quote unquote. And I think it's just so fascinating how so many human cosmologists speak about us coming from the stars, and in a way, how dissociated we are from them today, and we can't even see them. I think in the way that there's pollution under the water, there's all the light pollution. That means we can't see the stars. So the oceanic highways, it makes me think of where you also grew up in Australia, and the songlines of the land. And I'm curious, are the ways that you follow the songlines in Australia, and maybe you can mention to some listeners what they are, is that similar to like following the songlines of the ocean? Are those the highways? Because in your work, you speak about whale dreaming and tracking the songlines of the ocean. So is that related to this kind of highway concept? And is it similar to what happens on land?
That's a really good question. When we're talking about songlines, that's a term that a lot of Indigenous Aboriginal people refer to it as. So I won't go too much into that, as it's their story of how they travel the land and how they share their creation stories and how they would go from place to place. And I guess it's similar in a way, because we have our stories also when we travel the currents and the lines. And so, you know, for example, if we were to launch from Hawaii, there's a rock called South Rock in Hawaii on the Big Island that I've been taken to, where our waka used to be tied to this this boulder out in the water. And when a certain time of the year would come and the winds would be right and the currents would be changing, we would actually launch from this particular rock and we would be taken. And that would be like, I don't know what you would call it, the M1, the Highway 1, I guess. And, you know, so that's when you would kind of go. And, yeah, we would sing our way through the days and the nights, taking stories from one place, taking our journey on the way and creating these new songs about, you know, what happens along the way, what do we see along the way, where do we stop for water along the way, where do we stop for the good coconuts, you know, who do we come across, who was in the waka, you know, what talents, what gifts did they have, what chiefs were we carrying. So these stories, these songs, these waiata, these songs, we would obviously be constantly creating and taking them with us. So when we arrived, we can then sing the history of the journey and who we are as people.
Don't the whales do that as well? From my understanding, like all the different clans of whales have their own songs and they're constantly singing across the ocean all the time. And they're even like now mapping, right, some of that whale language.
Yes.
Is it similar? I mean, you guys are doing this, you know, as humans above the water, but what do you guys understand about the way that the whales are also singing intergenerational songs?
Well, you know, we're always finding out new things. And just recently, I was at one of the aquariums in Maui, and they were sharing, and they're a healing aquarium. They take on other sick animals and things like this. And he was saying that, yeah, the males come and compete every year, and then the big boss, the big guy, whoever is the alpha, gets to sing his song for that year. And so then they sing that song for a whole year. He becomes the songline leader, and that's the frequency that they would carry out. I know, it was so interesting. I was like, I didn't know that. And so we're finding out more and more with lots of research how it is. And yeah, I'm still like, surely women sing, surely the matriarchs have got a song and they sing to their young, like, so we're still discussing that.
Oh my gosh, I find it so beautiful. You said to me in our last call as well that while the whales are singing in the ocean, they're upholding some kind of sonic frequency. And whilst that's the kind of thing that I think it can sound quite new age, our previous guest on the podcast, she spoke about, you know, the earth has a frequency, which is true. I mean, it's been measured. And so obviously everything is sound, everything is vibration. And is there a belief within your culture that the whales, like the actual frequency of their singing underwater, I mean, this is so arrogant to say as a human, but like it serves a purpose in a way. Like, is there the sort of vibration of their singing underwater? Is it creating something for the oceans? Like, if they were to fall silent, I wonder what would happen if that frequency is gone.
That's a really good point. What if certain birds in the world all of a sudden fell silent? Not just our whales, but all of our creatures that sing, the frogs. What if the frogs or the bees started to fall silent? Like, we would be in big trouble, Yeah. As far as whales are concerned, I mean, yes, their voice is vital in the ocean. It actually, I believe personally, it is a frequency that is imprinted into water that actually enhances the entire planet. I mean, come on. It just is common sense. It's common sense to me. Dr. Emoto said it all. If you have a glass of water and you tell it that you love it, and you tell it the opposite, it obviously is going to change the memory and structure of water. So with our whales singing these frequencies that are humongous, I mean, they're the largest mammals on the planet, and their voice is all sonic. It's all sonar, right? So, I mean, this pulse, I believe, is like consciousness of our planet. And there's lots of things that are important for me personally, being a whale woman. I love them so much, and I'm so grateful to know, even on off whale season, they're still out there doing their thing. And it's not just their voice. I mean, we know that if they breach, like when they breach and they're tearing those microcosms off of them, that is even doing something to the ocean. And I'm not a whale expert, but I'm a whale lover, and I know a little bit.
I would contend. I think expertise comes in many forms, and
right.
I wanna chat next about this notion of your work in terms of sonic weaving. Before we get there, while we're just talking about the ocean and the frequency of the ocean, and now linking into sonic weaving, which is what you're doing with all of your incredible skill. If we were to listen, let's say, to the frequency of the ocean right now, or the frequency of the whales, just from your perspective, it's always a humble experiment, right? But what might the ocean be telling us? What might its sonic voice be saying to us as humans right now?
Okay, a couple of things. I think one, it's really noisy. You guys are really loud. Like, humans are so loud. I can't find my children. I can't find my way to my home, right? I'm landing on places because I'm so out of whack. I'm so dizzy and disorientated by shipping, just boating, just EMF noise, satellites, underwater seismic blasting. All of those things are contributing. I mean, the plastic pollution, they're just drowning in our humanness. And I'd say they'd be telling us we're really sick. There are parts of our ocean that are really, really sick. I mean, sorry to be a bit of a downer on that question, but that's a bit of a reality check if we're being honest, Yes, our oceans are beautiful. Yes, they are life-giving, but there are parts that we are making a big mess in their world.
I'm 100% with you. I was learning the other day that the Posidonia, which is this very, very, very ancient underwater seagrass between some of the islands in the Mediterranean, between Ibiza and Formentera specifically, some of the oldest ones, they actually explode, like their cell walls explode with the motorboats that pass. And so, that's that on a small scale, right?
Right.
And so I don't think it's about being a downer, but there's something, I think, entirely correct about what you're saying. And we'll get to your album later, but your first album, Fire and Water, is about, obviously, the waters of the earth. But you use this language of water being the womb, or the womb frequency. And if you think about the fact that we were on land, we went into water, we came back to land, like human beings, we are aquatic creatures. Like we grow our babies in a little, bowl of salt water, not a bowl, I've already said, so sack of salt water. And in a way, we are
cosmos.
deeply aquatic. And there's this notion for me that, yes, exactly. And there's this notion for me that the ocean is also our womb. And so in that sense, it's also a mother. And when you think of everything we throw into the ocean and all of the activities that happen there, and the trawling and all of the illegal catch, you're doing that to the womb. And so in a way, what will be born out of that entity, for future generations? Like, it's really quite sobering. So Whaia, you describe yourself as a sonic weaver and not a sound healer. Please share with us what that terminology means for you. What is it that you're weaving?
Well, it's funny because as Māori people, I was kind of taught that we don't talk about ourselves as healers, although we are. There's a proverb that speaks about the sweet potato doesn't speak about how sweet it is, and that's for others to say. And I'm still picking up on my language. So aroha mai, I should have actually said that in Māori first, but still learning and reclaiming. But as a sonic weaver, like we are weavers. We're known for our beautiful clothing, and especially our work with harakeke, the flax. And I mean, we used to use it for rope, or we still do, like lots of things. Our cloaks and rope. A lot of big ships used to come in and get our rope made of harakeke because it's one of the strongest plants that you can use. It's so hard to actually break it. So it was strong enough for ships. And weaving's a big part of our culture. And when I was, first moving from singer-songwriter, guitarist, in bands and doing the whole, just kind of figuring myself out, writing songs, singer-songwriter, verse, chorus, verse stuff. Someone gave me a crystal bowl to play. And I although just before that, I was starting to wonder, after some years, I mean, look, I started singing when I was 30 years old. I shared my voice publicly, was for the first time, and I'll be 50 this year. So there's like a good decade of discovering my voice and figuring out what even is that, and what do I even want to say, and how am I going to say it? And then it kind of shifted into this. Wait a minute, what instruments did we used to play as Māori people when I started getting into the deeper side of like this awakening of remembering? And so I started to just ask this within myself, actually. And I would go home and I would spend some time with my family, and my auntie gave me my first taonga pūoro, which was what we call our singing treasures, the sounds of our natural living world, the instruments that we make as Māori people. By spending time with nature and allowing nature to share with us their secrets and their sounds and their messages of healing for us as people. If you're sitting still enough and listening quietly, and having that beautiful, deep relationship, we've birthed these instruments. And actually, they used to be in museums a long, long time ago. And we started to reclaim them back and then go and play them to people. And people couldn't remember what they were or where they came from. Until then, they would start to play them. Our rangatira, Richard Nuns, Brian Flintoff, and Hirini Melbourne, they would play these instruments to the elders, and they would start crying and they would start remembering what they were and sharing their stories when they were young. And so that was a whole revival happening as well. But for me personally, I didn't, when I first made my business card, my friends are like, you need a business card. You're like making music and sounds now. And I'm like, okay, what should I write on it? And they're like, well, you've got to put sound healer. And I'm like, doesn't really sit right with me. But I did. I wrote that. I wrote sonic healer or something. And then as soon as I held it physically in my hand and I looked at it, I thought, geez, if I just change that H to a W and it's a sonic weaver, a sound weaver. I'm a sonic weaver. I weave sound with sacred sonics. Oh my God, that feels so in alignment with what I'm doing, and how I'm birthing this new sound, by reclaiming my First Nations instruments, their ancient voices, and then blending that with crystal bowls and the crystalline frequency, and being able to come into this whole new world of freedom when it comes to sound. There's no like borders of, it starts here and it's got to end at 3 minutes something so that you get on the radio. Like it became more than that. It became more than a package that, I had to try and fit into. It became about a deeper sense of weaving what I was feeling when I was in these frequencies. And then I started sharing them with other friends, and they're like, oh my gosh, you've got to do more of this. You need to be in a hall or something. So it birthed from there, and it's been over a decade now.
And so from that girl that was in the rock bands and playing the more traditional Western instruments, I love that story of museum pieces being like actually revitalized and reanimated. Like museums can be such sad spaces. I just want all those objects to be in use sometimes. They're sort of sitting behind it's like a zoo, it's sort of not where someone should be sometimes. Was it different when you started working with the First Nations, the Indigenous instruments? Like, do they ask to be played in a different way? Do you need to have a different type, like you as the musician, do you need to have a different type of skill set, presence, sensory acuity when you're playing these instruments versus a guitar or something else? Like, is it different?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very intuitive. And after years of this practice and developing, I just set my tipuna out, like each one is their own entity and their own being and representing different parts of our environmental world. Some of them are, from the ocean, some of them are from the earth, some of them are from the forest. So I lay them all out, and then I just, I have a foundation of how I open and how I close, and then whatever happens in the middle is totally dependent on the energy of what's going on where we are, whether it's a full moon or a new moon, whether it's like, all of the star alignments and all of the worldly, universal things, I should say. And then there is the actual container of the space that you're in and how you're serving best that space. You could be serving just one person or 4 or 5 people, or you could be serving 1,000 at a time. It really depends on which one wants to speak to me during that journey, that collective, I would say, the collective journey of that moment in time. So this is how I like to weave it together. I don't go in going, oh, you're going to play first and then you, and then I'm going to play you, and that's how it's going to happen. It's like a ceremony. You can't explain to you can't go, oh, I'm going to birth like this. My baby's going to come out with her head first. I'm going to have a lovely time and nothing's going to go wrong. Like it's a ceremony of life. And this is the weave. How do we weave our lives in every moment, and how best can we serve that space, serve my relationship with my partner, serve my job, serve these people who are coming in and wanting to explore themselves in a safe sound space with these types of frequencies. Of course, the third weave, one being my tonga pōro, the second being the crystalline frequency, and the third being my vessel and my connection to the earth and the stars and the animal kingdom that I've been able to experience and be taught by, to be able to carry those certain frequencies. So as a whale dreaming woman, I used to go out into the whale sanctuary with Aboriginal elder Bunalori, who's a whale song and dance man from the Great Australian Bight down on the southern end of Australia. There's a lot of southern right whales down there, whereas on the east coast we have humpbacks. And we would go out for 1 week and with our instruments, and we would just sing and play to them and just sing songs like, I love you, like it was so beautiful. And we would then drop hydrophones down in the water, and that's underwater microphones, and we'd have the sounds coming through the speaker of the catamaran. And then so we could hear them singing, and then we, would interact, and they would come right up to us and they would love it. I mean, they love sound. They're singers. There are global superstars, right? And so we get to like have this beautiful interaction with them, and they love the vibrations that I love vibrations. They're the biggest love vibration on the planet. So, we would create songs and write songs and created an album called Bunalori and the Whale Dreamers. So I was one of the people in the band. And it was amazing. We traveled the country for 4.5 years touring, doing shows all the way up in Arnhem Land and the Sacred North, all the way down in Melbourne, East Coast of Australia, festivals and corroborees and gatherings all over the place. I was taught his language, and actually this is where it started to turn for me on a deeper sense. He taught me his language, and I was singing Aboriginal whale songline language and words, and I would get off just being so elated, It'd be like, wow, that was amazing. We did it again. We shared our heart and we shared those frequencies. And then it would hit me like right here, and I'd be like, oh, Whaia, why aren't you singing your own language too? You're from whale riding people. We're whatever whale people. Like, we have language coming from the stars and from Te Ra, the beautiful sun, our star in this galaxy. So that actually triggered a very deep journey of me going home and putting more of that knowledge in my basket.
What you're sharing really evokes in me, and I wonder if it would be the same to other people listening. It evokes like a profound sense of longing. And maybe also as a woman, there's something around the woman and the voice. But I think all of us have a voice, right? And we're like, no, I'm not a good singer. I'm not a good singer. And it's just so sad that even today, like, our voice has become commoditized as something that has to be done well versus like a profound release and channel of something much deeper. And so inside of that longing, I also want to return to this word that you used before of reclamation. And I want to ask you, especially for those who are listening who are like, yes, like there's something there that I want to touch in myself. Like I want to know what it's like to be attuned to the harmonies of the earth. I want to know what it's like to be able to sing. Maybe my culture, I think most cultures have ancient instruments that can be revived. And what's so unique about Whaia is you had to really find your way. I mean, you had elders and you had, grandmother and teachers, but you had to teach yourself so many things. And so what was your like internal process for learning how to channel these melodies, to be present to what wants to come through, to be in conversation with the land, with the instruments? Like, what could you share from your own experience that could support others in their journey with that, if they feel a similar longing or desire?
Yeah, that's beautiful because I say if you can talk, you can sing, right? And even if you can't speak, you could still sing with your body. But most of us can make sound, and I think the fear, and I'll speak for myself. Maybe people resonate with this. Is that the fear is that what you feel inside that ball of energy, I think we're afraid that it's so powerful. I'm afraid to let it out because I don't know what it's going to do. I don't like, it's this anticipation of like, oh, it's not even so much about it being perfect because like we're not all Beyonce's, right? But then again, she's just got one genre covered. There's like a bazillion infinite amount of genres out there that you may kind of be kind of resonating more with. And let me just say that the genre that is the most popular is the you genre, the one that is only uniquely your voice, and the power that actually can come up from that. I guess it's like Pele, she's just laying dormant. I'm talking about the volcanic goddess, right? That lava that sits underneath the surface, just waiting quietly to like be seen or to be heard. And then as soon as she lets it fly, it's like this explosion of just magnificence, and it births new world and creates new land and gives new life. And we're like, oh wow. But until you actually let it fly and give over to that feeling, you're always just stuck in your head. It's just a thinking, it's a brain thing and not a full body experience, which is what we need to turn on all of those channels to have this full body experience. Is what does it actually feel like to run this sound through the caverns of my vessel? And that can take over an entire body at first. And I mean, we've all been through stuff and we've got a lot of stuff to release, I feel. The point is just to open in the first place. The point is just to try, just to allow, just to be vulnerable, just to be brave, to have courage, to back yourself, to love yourself, is to release sound. We our mothers gave our first sound, I believe, when she was howling down those hallways. Your ancient song, that's your first song line. Your mother making those bellowing guttural sounds when you were arriving and taking your first breath. And maybe that's a primordial memory that we have when it comes to our voices. I've never really thought about it before like that, but there you go. It's not until you start speaking into it that it actually becomes something manifest in this physical world. And, we're all trying to just navigate our way through those highways, through those currents of who am I, spirit in body? And how do I drive this vessel? What is it really capable of? And when we start to actually express these sounds, express these feelings, express these emotions, we can then start to actually feel the after effects of relief, of peace, of freedom and purpose and clarity and healing. So, just let it fly, I say. Let your spirit, let your voice fly to the winds. Go to the ocean, bellow it out into the abyss. Go to the forest and let it express yourself to those magnificent trees who are listening, because honestly, that's who matters. Not, what's the neighbors going to think? Who matters is our beautiful natural world, our environment. Our voice connected to the environment is really where it's at. Yes, later on we can get better at learning how to drive the big truck of our bodies. I like to think of it sometimes like that, going from a car to maybe like a 40-foot bus, which is what we live in a 40-foot bus at the moment. So it's like, it's some deep breaths at first, but eventually you get to know how to navigate something larger than yourself. And it may be when we start to kind of get out of the way somewhat, we can then start to actually find a path. And then to keep practicing and to keep opening and to keep practicing. And then maybe that practice becomes rehearsal, it just becomes such a familiar feeling that it can start to become your normal eventually. And then you can start to broaden out even more and then experiment and then to actually refine what you can actually do, be, and become in your life when we use the power of our voice.
Whaia, I would follow you anywhere into revolutionary song manifestation. I could just see you with this big banner being like, follow me, we're gonna do this. And I'm like, yes, I'm right behind you. Wherever you tell me, I'll go. What a rallying cry. And just kind of following on from that, what I'm hearing is everyone has the capacity to express something. And do you find, because you've run workshops for people, you've done voice activation workshops, do you find that it's easier in a group or alone? And sort of, is there something about doing it as a collective?
I mean, I love to sing by myself quite a lot, actually. And then, I mean, when I first started going home and learning, and I went to school in Aotearoa, only for a really tiny second because I still had young children. I remember one of my teachers, because we stand every lunchtime, everyone in the school, and I'm speaking about our Māori school, we would have there's certificate 1 and 2, and then level 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're all adults, some of us young adults, but the range of age is from young adult to grannies still coming in to reclaim the language and learn. And we would practice every lunchtime, and we'd have to sing certain songs and learn certain songs that teach us about our area and our people and who we are. And I remember the teacher, the kaiako, she said one day, "Oh, come on, open up your waha, open up your mouth. Share your voice. Don't be selfish." And I was like, oh my God, I never thought about it like that. I'm so concerned about myself and how I feel and what would people think, when actually it's about the whole whānau. It's about the whole family. Your voice isn't just for you. It's for everyone. And because we can all teach ourselves something, and we all have a different tone and we all have a different timbre, and everyone is sweet and beautiful, like every flower, like every tree. Um, yeah, and so I just think that's really where it's at. I mean, I love to sing by myself when it comes to just discovering new things or just going into a moment and like just letting it fly for me, because I just want to turn the engine on. But then when I get out there into groups, sometimes I'll invite a collective kind of vibration or some toning, and then all of a sudden people are just so keen to join in, and then you find like you feel the reflective wave come back at you, and then all of a sudden that consciousness hits you as a facilitator, and then something else clicks in the system, and you're like, oh wow, this is actually this is another level again. So it's all relative, whether you're singing for yourself, within yourself, or whether you're singing to thousands of people. It's all part of the bigger picture. But yes, the collective is where it's at.
And something you've shared with me is this vision you have for the Manawaka, which is this bus that you're, this big vehicle that you're piloting about. And that is also, in my understanding, about the collective, right? You've said it's about sharing culture, telling stories, traveling to schools. You're painting on the outside with this whole story of life and water and the rainbow serpent.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about the bus and what this vision is and how this is sort of about bringing gifts to the collective.
Well, I mean, it's a 40-foot B12 Volvo for you, like motorheads out there, people who like to know what kind of car you drive. But in other words, yes, it's 12.5 meters long and it's 4.1 meters high. And my husband and I transformed it with the help of this other old guy up on the Sunshine Coast, Doug. We love Doug, who helped us kind of shell it out. We took out the seats, and and it was birthed out of actually us having nowhere to live. Like we got pushed just a little bit after COVID. We just kind of pushed on, and then we ended up going, oh, we'll get another house, and it didn't turn out that way for us, even though we tried everything. And then we ended up living out in the bush in a tent for 14 months in our friends' like backyard. And I was thinking, what is actually going on with our life right now? Like, we didn't have access to clean water. We didn't have access to like power. I mean, eventually we got some recycled old golf buggy batteries and hooked them up with some old house solar panels. And we're just kind of like under these trees, we're just going, whoa, this is really what's going on. And it became about a consciousness that said, go back to the land, go back to nature, and just remember who you are. And so it did. It reminded me how I grew up in the desert, and we used to go camping a lot. And it took me back to my younger days of what kind of life that was, being able to see the stars, being able to light the fire, and actually having relationship with that again, instead of walking into my four walls and flicking on a switch and, oh, that's right, I'm just flushing and I'm just turning on the tap. Like, I don't even think about it. Like these days, my daughter, she will hear the sound of the water pump and go, oh, that's enough, Mum. Oh yeah, okay. Like she consciously goes into other houses and will know that water is just running just down the drain for no reason. So it really kind of honed in our senses about living in a different way and about appreciating what we have. And so we built this 40-foot bus. We call it the Manawaka. And we painted a 12-meter mural of a waka on the outside, a Māori traditional canoe representing who we are, or my lineage, and how we travel. And I thought, well, we won't be getting a boat just yet, but we will be land sailing. And so in my mind, I was still traveling in the waka, and I'm still sharing myself through the stories of the waka. There's like depictions of our creation story in there, and other tells that we have through the symbolism. And then I thought, well, we are traveling Australia and we are going on sacred country. So out of respect, I wanted to honor that and add the rainbow serpent that wraps around it. Because, my family are also Aboriginal Māori, and I work and live with a lot of Aboriginal family and travel. So, yeah, we're going to be sharing that. So it's an open living canvas, and it's for other people to be able to contribute and collaborate and share that it's not just for us, it's for everyone. Let's share it with community. Let's not just share it. Let's share it with a purpose and go, well, what are our stories? How we can pay respect to the land, but if we don't actually know what it is or what they think or how they think, so that we can actually try and become into this ancient way of thinking as we're moving to this new world. We've got to build these relationships. Like, it's really important to be able to just walk up to someone who's from this land and be able to say hello, and without being intimidated or shy. So I really feel like that's really important for us, and to share that with kids is vital, because that's how we're building the future generation, the next world leaders.
And that's so exciting. I'm going to find a way to have a link in the show notes for people to follow that journey. And especially, we have quite a lot of listeners in Australia. And so it would be really cool to see how you can engage with them. In the few minutes we have left, what's next for you in terms of like the things you want to bring in the world? Like, I know that you've mentioned the bus and you're doing voice activations, but also you'll be running whale sanctuary retreats. Curious about what those are, what they entail. But just like what's next, what's making your heart beat? And then that might also be ways for people to relate to what you're doing or find you.
Well, I started out just following my own path of curiosity and healing, and just tending to that and serving my community wherever I was at, my little community hall, my one friend, and it just grows from there. Today, and that's a 10-year journey. And it's important that we allow the flower, the tree, to grow and bloom over time. So that prepares us for the bigger work to come, which is what I'm doing now, walking with a Wisdom Keeper delegation. And that is a group of global elders, and we're walking into the United Nations space, bridging ancient wisdom into policy. And that may seem a bit crazy to walk into a place like that, because it's such a particular space. But I believe every voice is important in that space, and you've got to be a little bit tough to be able to do that, or true, should I say, really true in who you are and what you're about, and especially with the collective. So the first year was in Egypt, the second year was in Dubai. Last year we just did Azerbaijan for the COP29. That's the UN Climate Summit. And this year we'll be off to Brazil at the end of the year. I also sit on the board of Oceanic Global, which is a beautiful, beautiful oceanic protection group of beautiful people that do so much good work. And I'll be joining them this year in Nice in France for the World Oceans Summit. That happens only every 3 years. So we'll be there in June to share our voice there. That's very exciting to me. We're hoping to go back to the Lumi Nation and go canoeing with our elders as well. And what else? I mean, I have this dream, and I really want to birth it, and there's got to be a right timing for it. But I always thought that, like, when I hit a certain stage, that it's not just about me, it's about supporting other people that are looking in for sound, to move into sound healing for themselves as a modality, and maybe just for themselves, or to be able to share that within their community. So I want to birth the Sonic Weaver Sound Sanctuary. And for me, that's an online platform. And, you know, that'd be like some teaching online, and maybe some introductory courses. But I find that I just work best just like, let's breathe some air together. Okay, let's just do some real talk and find out where you're at and where you'd like to go. So I can help you navigate that space. But our longer project is to be birthing our retreat next year in January in Maui, on the ocean, for our women, for our wahine, particularly this one, with my other sister, Anella Gutierrez, and she is with the Hawaiian Outrigger Voyaging Society. She is amazing, and she is our sister. I call her like the Moana of Maui. She's out there on the canoes, and she holds a lot of star knowledge, navigation, and so we're teaming up, and she's our skipper. And then we'll be birthing our retreats out into Taonga as well later in the year, next year. So that's something to look forward to. But for now, we are here on the ground in Australia just for a little while longer before we take those bigger steps with our elder group around the world.
I so appreciate the worlds that you're bridging, even just the nations that you grew up in, like the ancestral lineages with, you know, places like the UN, and even just the worlds of someone's shy voice with, you know, them belting out a sonnet to the trees. I mean, like, a lot of people use the term bridge builder or sort of, but I think it's like the weaving is also across the world. And I so admire what you're doing, Whaia. Just to close, we can sort of say the usual goodbyes, but I was wondering if there was a vibration, a sound, anything you wanted to leave us with to close this sort of space and to close the conversation, you know, as a container. By all means, there's a space for that. Or if it's not appropriate, we can just, with huge smiles on our faces, thank each other and nod off. But in case there was something that wanted to come through, I wanted to make space for that as well, because we've been talking about the voice
right.
so
Yes.
much.
I would love to. And, you know, in honor of one of our beautiful queer, Fire Rose Pere, one of her vibrations was A-I-O. And it was one of the first karanga that I ever was taught from my auntie before she passed away. And the karanga being our ancient calling as wahine, as women, which we also teach and share how to access that voice, that particular voice of creation, space from the womb. But she shared this beautiful, that's called a karanga, but she shared this this kind of toning. So it's is the vibration of the mother. So we say I-O. And the E is the vibration of the child. And the O is the vibration of the father. So we have the mother, the child, and the father in those sounds. Take a deep breath in with me. And you can take that
better
to
already.
the ocean. You can take that to the ocean.
I
you
hope
can
that
take
the
it
people
as
listening
sweet as
did
you
that
want.
with us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Whaia, you are a just absolute sun, like ray of just bright light. And I just feel so energized having had this conversation. And really, I know many people will be checking out your work. And thank you for all you do. This has been so fascinating and beautiful.
Thank you too. It's always an honor and a pleasure to share our stories together, to share the breath of life together. So much love to you and everybody out there. I hope this supports you wherever you are in your journey.
I love this phrase that Whaia shared with us, where she speaks about Pele, the volcanic goddess, where she says, that lava that sits underneath the surface, it's waiting to be quietly seen or heard. And then as soon as she lets it fly, it's like an explosion of magnificence. It births new worlds, creates new lands, gives new life. And I just so appreciate the encouragement and the knowledge that those new worlds and expressions are latent inside each of us, just waiting to be moved through. And so with that, I will now turn us over to a different type of listening and meditation, which will be Whaia's album, Fire and Water. Just an excerpt from it. The longer one is on her website, which is linked in the show notes for download and purchase. It's always hard to excerpt from a much longer journey, one small track. As a writer myself, sometimes it's like, no, why would you take a sentence from a whole piece? So with all the respect of just people's time and, not wanting to make this into a 3-hour episode, here's a small sample that can just entice us into a different way of seeing and feeling and being. And I really encourage everyone to download the entire journey and create the proper time to let it move through you. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you very soon.
Come, my grandchild. Remember who you are. Te Me te aki o tō tinana. Me te aki o te nako. Me te aki